Hey everybody, and welcome to my opposition report on Zed. Now this video will go over how to effectively deal with Zed, take advantage of his weaknesses, and try and nullify his strengths. So if you struggle at all with Zed or have struggled in the past, I really recommend you watch this video. Now, a little bit of background about myself. I have Diamond 4 experience, mostly play control mages in the mid lane, so I do have a lot of experience going up against Zeds in the mid lane. Also, I'm going to be putting timestamps down below if you want to skip around to the different sections. We have Champion Select, Laning Phase, Team Fighting, and Zed is fed. What should I do now? Alright, and as always, I am open to all critique and feedback on my videos, and if you have any suggestions for the next opposition report, please let me know. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, and first up is the champion select, and what champions can be pretty good into Zed. Now usually I list off a bunch of different champions that can be good, but instead of that I'm going to go over 3 different archetypes that can really work well into what Zed is trying to do. First up is the push and roam type of champions. These include Twisted Fate, Aurelion Sol, and things like Talia. Now, these are very effective because it reduces Zed's ability to look for those tower dives, looks for those 1v1s, and look for that early snowball that can really help him carry the game and kind of get the game to end quicker, which is usually good for him. And Aurelion Sol, I think, is the best right now against Zed. He has that, Zed has a 45% win rate into Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol also outscales him and definitely can outroam him with his ability to go over the walls with his what is that, his E? Alright, and next, the next archetype that you can use to go against Zed is the just all in, just go on him, let's fight him, let's attack him, and just get champions that work effectively against Zed's kit. And I think one of those that really portray that idea, the absolute best, is Aurelia. Because her kit is a very dive heavy type of kit. Her kit also has a good outplay and a good key tool against Zed in her W, which gives her damage reduction, while Zed is trying to do his burst. Since he lacks a lot of consistent damage, Aurelia is a very ideal pick into Zed, and is MSI has shown us Aurelia is a great pick into the mid lane, and has CC for Zed as well, which is also a very big weak point in the assassins. So if you are a Aurelia player at all and your team has a bit of AP, definitely look into grabbing that Aurelia into Zed. Alright, and last up, the archetype to just kind of outscale him and out-team fight him. This is best represented, in my opinion, by Vladimir. He is a very good, strong team fighter. He provides a lot of AoE damage, and he has insane scaling, and he also has some good tools against Zed in his laning phase. With his ability to dodge damage with his W, he also has decent sustain in lane, so a lot of Zeds, what they try to do in laning phase is to kind of poke you out a little bit and then look for the alt-ins where Zed is, where Vladimir is going to be healing quite a bit of that poke out. Alright, and that will wrap up 3 different archetypes that you can run into Zed. If you guys know any champions that you really like running into Zed, please comment down below and let me know. Okay, and next up is the laning phase. A couple quick tips you can use against Zed. First up, if Zed uses his W aggressively to poke you and to look for that electrocute proc on you, he is very vulnerable to ganks. That is his mobility spell. So if he's using that in a very nilly-willy way, you should really let your jungler know, hey, this guy isn't as safe as you might think. With his playstyle being very aggressive, he can you can definitely look to set up ganks, and yeah, that is just the perfect time to attack the Zed when his W is down. Next up, if you're an AP caster in the mid lane, Zhonya's obviously a very great item into Zed. Don't be that mid laner everyone hates that's just building straight offensive damage when you're getting snowballed on. Alright, next up is make sure to use your flash appropriately, not when he has his ult up and his shadow still up. Make him use his mobility to follow you. Obviously, you want to be in good ranges. Make sure that you're respecting his combo and his range potential. Okay, and next up, his passive does a lot of damage in the early game, so be very wary of his low HP. If you are getting comfortable with his combo and how much damage you think it's going to be, just add a bit onto that because his passive is very strong, especially in the early game. Save CC for when he ults. This will cut his damage output at the most important point of his combo. He is very reliant on that damage, and if you dole that damage as much as possible, you will make him a less effective champion. Obviously, Exhaust is a very effective summoner spell, and make sure you're using it at the correct points when he is looking to burst. This is usually shown by his ult and when he is throwing his W. So when he's using cooldowns, you want to look to use your cooldowns. If he's not using cooldowns, don't look to use your cooldowns. Alright, and next up, be cognizant of where he's using his shadows and throwing his Qs and where he has the ability to jump to. If he's letting that shadow, if he's just throwing the shadow and then running away, don't be lured into a false sense of security, because a lot of people just wait until that last second of his W shadow to jump back and look to jump on you. Next up, Zed is very relatively weak, I would say pre-6, so take advantage of it, and definitely respect when he's about to level up. You should be counting minions, and you should know when he is about to hit 6 and respect him appropriately. Okay, next up, the most ideal time to engage him is when his shadow is down and he's using his Q to CS, and he has just in a very vulnerable state at that point, because he does have energy. He's not a resourceless champion, and really look to take advantage of the long cooldown of his W that is particularly prevalent in the early game. And next up, if you're struggling versus Zed in just any kind of capacity in ranked, I really recommend that you try playing him in normals, which is a key point, normals, not ranked. Play him in normals, and to just kind of better understand his kit and power spikes. This doesn't only apply to Zed, this really applies to any champion. I really recommend playing them if you are a struggling against him in laning phase. And last tip, this is very obvious, but I don't see my teammates always doing this when they're playing against a snowballing Zed, but armor is is effective against Zed in laning phase. Alright, now we'll wrap up the laning phase. Okay, and now into team fighting. So a couple things you should keep in mind when you are team fighting against a Zed. You need to be very cognizant of his AoE damage from his shadows, each throwing a shuriken and mimicking his E damage as well. So grouping isn't really that good of a idea. And also, if he's always going on to a certain carry, just don't stand near that carry, as you're going to take a lot of unnecessary damage from the AoE of his abilities. Next, when Zed is fed, you really need to focus him. Treat him like a Katarina that's fed. Treat him like a Master Yi that's fed. Treat him like a Yasuo. Alright, next up, CC, Exhaust, and Armor are the best ways to deal with Zed. I'm emphasizing this. I know I've mentioned it a little bit beforehand, but those three are the keys in beating Zed in the team fighting phase. And also, know his damage potential at all points. Know how much damage he can throw out and respect it accordingly. Don't just be running into team fights, just, oh, I have my friends around, I'm not going to die. And then he just runs in and kills you. Just be careful of his damage. Alright, and next up, a very big tip is forcing his ult out defensively. If you're a tank and you have a decent amount of base damage, try and force his ult out just by going on him if you are able to. Next up is watch his tendencies on where he throws his shadow after his ult and play accordingly. If he's one of those Zeds that like throwing it behind for a good escape route or throwing it forward for aggressively, just keep in mind what he's doing and just try and take advantage of that, obviously. Alright, and the next is importance of utility items to protect carries. These include Nice Vow, these include things like, I don't know, Zeeks for the slow, or things like speed ups from Shirelias. They can really be the difference between dodging that Q from the Zed or not. And that will wrap up my tips for team fighting against Zed. Okay, and now, my final section and favorite section. Zed is fed, what do we do now? Team fighting actually might be the way to go against Zed. He excels in 1v1 scenarios and side lane pressure and roaming around the map and getting those assassinations. So, you might want to look to team fight when Zed is ahead. Next up, trading for the fed Zed can be a very effective way to approach team fights. It works really well with champions that have high impact ults like Annie, like like Fizz that can just flash in, do their combo, kill the Zed, but just give up their life in the meantime. You are taking a lot of gold out of the enemy team while just losing a little bit of gold that you had on yourself. Next up, minimizing losses. When you are behind and a Zed is just snowballing and doing really well, he can just tower dive you nonstop when his ult is up. Sometimes the best course of action is to just give up that tower and just let him do that, as opposed to just getting killed under tower. I mean, he's going to take the tower either way. The only thing that you're going to change is how many times he's going to kill you. Next up, the importance of vision control is so crucial in stifling Zed's roaming ability. He loves going level 6 to the bot lane against squishy underlevel targets, so please invest in those vision control wards and make sure you're warding for the I would say bot lane more than most, especially if you have a safe top lane like something with the dash. Next up, baiting out his mobility to gap close onto you and not to chase you. So what this means is you want him to be throwing his W to try and get closer to you, not that you guys are already, not being in the situation where you guys are already kind of close and he can just use his W to get right on top of you. So make sure he's using his ability to gap close, not to chase. Next up, looking for patterns in his combos. This is very prevalent in the lower elos. Zeds have very bad habits of doing the same combo that is just ingrained in their brain over and over again. So if he's always throwing his shurikens behind you, if you're running, he just thinks you're going to run away from him. Just go up or just go down and just change what you're doing, and you can really see some results with this pretty quickly. All right, and that will wrap up this section. Content. Alright, and that will wrap up my opposition report to Zed. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and as always, I'm open to any kind of feedback or critique on my videos, and also up to suggestions on what you guys want to see next for the next report. If there's something you're struggling with, please let me know, and I will do one of these for it. And as always, guys, take it easy.